Okay, hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Meghan Vitale. I am a planner with the Syracuse Metropolitan Transportation Council. I'm joined today by my colleague Mario Colone. I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are, who our agency is, SMTC, and then I am going to talk about our 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which we're working on right now, and then touch on a couple of other recent studies, and then Mario is going to talk about a current study that we have on our work program that's relevant to the Manlius and the eastern suburbs as well. Okay, so has anyone heard of the SMTC before? Okay, that's a really high percentage of this crowd, so that's good. So we are what is called a Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO. We do transportation planning and programming of federal surface transportation funds, capital funds for the Syracuse metropolitan area. Our planning area consists of all of Onondaga County and a few towns in Oswego County and one town in Madison County. And that's largely based on the on census data for the Syracuse urbanized area. Every urbanized area in the country with 50,000 people or more has an MPO. So hundreds of our organizations across the US. There are 14 MPOs in New York State right now. So all the major cities are going to have an MPO to do transportation planning for them. We are a council. So Mario and I, we are just staff to the council. The council really consists of the policy committee members that are shown here, the 13 voting members. So these are the agencies mostly that own and run the transportation system. So we don't own any infrastructure. We don't run anything. We don't have buses out there on the roads. But our member agencies do. So they are state, county, city, various departments, as well as regional planning board, Centro, Center State CEO. So those member agencies form this committee, this council, and the Syracuse Metropolitan Transportation Council. Yeah. Yes, it is. We are federally mandated to exist. Again, for every urbanized area with 50,000 people or more in the country has a metropolitan planning organization, and we're governed by federal rules for metropolitan planning. Yes. So federal capital funds that come to our region for transportation projects come through our agency. So our policy committee members, our committee members collectively decide how to spend those funds in our region. So that is the purpose of an MPO, to do that programming and then also to do planning studies for the region. Okay. So every MPO has 3 primary documents that they need to produce. One of them is the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about today. That is the long-range plan. We used to call it the LRTP, the Long Range Transportation Plan. The terminology has kind of evolved to Metropolitan Transportation Plan, but it's still the same thing. It is the long-term vision for what transportation should look like in our region. So from the large goals that we define in that MTP, those kind of flow out into two different areas. Planning through our Unified Planning Work Program, which is our annual listing planning studies that we will do for our member agencies and the municipalities in our region. And then the Transportation Improvement Program, which is the capital program for paving roads and rehabbing bridges or building new trails. So those capital projects in the region get federal funds. Those all get listed on our Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. Yes?
So 81, that had fallen out of your jurisdiction when they did the redesign of 81. That was a debate, or was that when you talk about the federal funds coming to you and then you disperse? What was your role with that?
Yeah, that is very much within our jurisdiction. So
okay, so I didn't know if a different agency superseded that, your power, so to speak.
No, so the state DOT is one of our member agencies. Mario can talk a lot more about. He's our expert on the capital programming, he manages our TIP. But the funds for all phases of the I-81 project are programmed on our TIP. And we were involved way back, like 2011 to 2013, doing the initial corridor study, the planning study, that then led up to the environmental review, the NEPA review that the state DOT completed. So we have very much been involved in that. And yes, any federal dollars for transportation to this region is going to come through our committee.
Yeah, I can add to that, Megan. I think that's an important point. It's mega projects like 81 that are billions of dollars down to small local paving on federally eligible streets. So there's a classification of what's eligible for funding through the federal government. But if it's a project even with a single dollar of federal transportation assistance, that has to be approved by our committee in addition to the program.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there any mechanism for theoretically equitable allocation of federal funding amongst all of the jurisdictions that would want those dollars? Or is it, is a lot of it relate to the political power of the representatives from the particular areas that the funds go to?
So the region receives an allocation, and it is.
In other words, is there a per capita maybe allocation of funding depending on the number of people who live within a particular area?
So there's yes and no. Not to get too nuanced, but there's certain funding sources that we deal with, and one of them is specific just to our urban area. And that urban area allocation that comes from the federal government then to the New York State DOT for distribution amongst the various urban areas in New York State is based on one primary variable being population within that urban area. Every other funding program that we list on our transportation improvement program, there's some variations of how they're distributed within the region that we are located in, but there's no defined by the federal government that those dollars have to be used in our area. The only dollars that have to be spent in our area are the ones that we call urban. But there is a methodology that breaks things out by federally eligible road miles, number of bridges, conditions of roads, conditions of bridges. So there's local distribution of funds, but again, there's just that one source that deals specifically to fund population.
This is just a listing of the planning studies that are on our current Unified Planning Work Program, UPWP. So they really vary. As you can see, we're doing some work. We're looking at Micron and that development and transportation impacts of that. We look at sidewalks. We look at parking and signage. We use a computer model called a travel demand model to look at different scenarios. We can input to that model expected population, job growth in the region, and different transportation alternatives, and we can run some assessments using that. We look at complete streets, pedestrian and bicycle accommodations, highlighted in bold here. One that we have, the Manoa, Fayetteville, and Manlius Bicycle and Pedestrian Connection Study. That's currently ongoing, and Mario is going to talk about that towards the end of this presentation. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our Metropolitan Transportation Plan. As I noted before, this is one of the requirements for every MPO to have this 20+ year vision. Our MPO is required to update our MTP every 5 years. So our last one was adopted at the end of September in 2020. So the clock is ticking. We've already started this process, but we have about a year to get our new MTP adopted. So this just shows the timeline for that. We kicked it off in October of 2023. We need to finish by September of 2025. we've been spending a lot of the spring and summer of this year doing public outreach. So this was a great opportunity to come and talk to all of you and hopefully get you to take our MTP survey, which we are closing today. We're going to close end of August. We held out a little bit, so hopefully you'll answer that. So the MTP is also guided by a study advisory committee made up of our member agencies. Those are listed here. Again, a lot of the same agencies I already mentioned. City, Centro, Regional Planning Board, Center State, various state departments, Onondaga County, Oswego County, Onondaga Nation, so all of those member agencies. And we meet with them for the MTP. We've been meeting about every couple of months to provide them updates on the process and get inputs. So we've spent a lot of time talking about goals and objectives and planning context as we started this MTP process. So our study advisory committee members coalesced around these two primary influences over transportation planning in our region over the next 25 years. Those will likely be that the region is going to grow. We're expecting that growth associated with the economic development in our region, and technology will change. So this is the context under which we need to look at the transportation system over the next 25 years. We also, as part of the MTP, need to develop a financial plan for the next 25 years, kind of in broad strokes, but a policy influences what we fund. So these four kind of initiatives that we're calling priority funding initiatives, most of this is a holdover from our previous long-range transportation plan. We've made progress on some of these, but what we hear in the community through all of our work, these continue to be priorities. So those are to complete the I-81 community grid project, continue to expand the regional trail network, implement the BRT system as proposed in our Smart One study, and then the new add was White Pine Business Park regional accessibility. So we know from working with our advisory committee members and what we've heard from the public so far that these are priorities, but we also want to know what else people want to see happen over the next 20 years.
What is the BRT system?
Yeah, great question. So BRT is bus rapid transit. So it's, to put it most simply, it is a bus system that acts much more like light rail. Limited stops, much higher frequency. The stops are more like stations, higher amenities, a regular schedule, so you don't necessarily need to look at the time, but knowing that a bus will come, say, every 15 minutes. And we did a study we completed back in 2018 that looked at the likelihood of where a BRT system would most likely be successful in our region. So that defined two corridors. One of them is from the Eastwood neighborhood of the city of Syracuse down James Street, which right now is the highest ridership bus route in the system, out to OCC. So a lot of connecting neighborhoods with education and jobs, and then from the University Hill area to Destiny, USA. So those are the corridors that have been identified for the BRT service. I know that Centro is also looking at South Salina Street as an addition to that.
Would that involve a reconsideration of the former mini light rail system that was attempted from the eastern suburbs, I think, through downtown over the existing railroad tracks? That was quite a while ago.
Yeah, so I think you're referring to On-Track.
Brief period of time.
Yeah, so On-Track wasn't light rail. It is on an existing freight, or it ran on an existing freight corridor. It doesn't really connect the dense neighborhoods with the destinations that people want to get to. That's a problem for a transit system. Yeah, it doesn't make it very successful. Right. Yeah, but BRT, bus rapid transit, has been really successful in other small to medium-sized cities. Albany is on their third, okay, corridor that they've built out, and that's really been successful there. So we're looking to model that. Okay, so a large part of the MTP process is defining goals and objectives. There's a lot of inputs to this. We have federal requirements. We have to look at state and regional plans, the previous goals and objectives, as well as input from our study advisory committee and input from the public. So that's what we're hoping to get from all of you. Right now, the proposed goals for the MTP kind of grouped into 3 goal areas: economy, community, and environment. So those are listed here, things like supporting efficient freight movement, expanding access, connecting people to jobs, responding to changing technologies, minimizing environmental impacts of transportation, reliability, safety. So these are the goals that we've drafted so far, but once we wrap up our public involvement, we'll finalize these goals. And then they each have objectives that go within each of these goal areas. So public involvement for this round of the MTP, we've tried to do a lot of small meetings out in the community. So we've done this public involvement over the last 6 months or so, and we've been to a few dozen meetings or tabling events where we've been able to have more one-on-one interactions with people rather than having like big public meetings that people have to come to in the evening. So that's been a different approach for us. We also have an online survey that we're pushing 300 responses to. So I think we've gotten a lot of good feedback through this approach. Yeah.
Do you ever go to the high schools and ask
I did.
kids?
Actually, it's a great question. I love that because that was something when we kind of designed our public involvement plan for this MTP, that our team, our staff, we were really excited about that. We kept saying, this is a 20-year plan. We need to have some meetings where, the people who will be using this system in 20 years are, who are those people going to be? Like, we want to reach some of the youth. So, yes, so we went to 2 government classes at Onondaga Central High School, which is a fairly rural area of our region. And then we spent a whole day at Henniker High School. It was like 5 classes, and in both cases it was like the active citizenship class. So yeah, we spent a whole day talking to the classes at Henniker, and we got a lot of good feedback from students.
Well, I was just going to add, I have a son that's going to FM High School in Illinois Middle School, but his frustration is getting to school. He was wanted to ride his bike actually to school, which is great, but it was not feasible trying to get to the village manuals from where we are. Again, that just goes to a large issue, but I think it'd be, they're going to be users in a different way, but we don't think about young teenagers. They're actively involved in walking and riding their bikes through community.
Yeah.
And they see things differently than I think we do. And I also know, at least for the high school, it amazes me. Here's kids that should be thinking about climate change, and every one of the juniors and seniors at that high school are driving to school.
Well, I
it
will tell
creates traffic.
Electric vehicles?
No.
I'm being funny.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the irony. So I think it's great that you're reaching out to the schools, and I would encourage more of that because those are also your future citizens.
Yeah.
With all that.
100%, absolutely. And you can grab one of our bookmarks here with the QR code and tell your son to take the survey.
Okay, well, okay.
But yeah, I mean, we got really different feedback from those 2 groups of students, and in one group, most students had a driver's license and had access to their own vehicle, or at least like a family vehicle that they mostly had use of. And in the other group, very few, and the students in the city were talking a lot more about how they use the bus system right now, their frustrations with the bus system, what works, what doesn't, how they use the VO scooter system. I mean, they had a much more varied experience, I would say, with the transportation system because they really use all modes of the transportation system. Yeah, so it was a long day. Someone who's not, a teacher by training, but it was really interesting. It was very worthwhile being there. We also did Also youth, we spoke to a couple of the young adult and youth groups at the Q Center in Syracuse. So got some additional youth engagement there as well. Yeah, so agreed. That's really important because again, it's a 20-year plan. So we need to talk to the people who will be using our system over the next few decades. Yeah. Yeah, so that's what I have on the MTP. You can go to our website, smtcmpo.org/MTP2050 to take the survey. We will be closing it by the end of this week. We've been saying today, but we'll leave it open for a few more days. If people want to get those survey responses in. And any other questions on the MTP, or we touch on a few other studies? Okay, we can come back to that. But so other recent studies that we've completed, before Mario talks about our current study, just some things I wanted to know. We recently completed a financing local mobility study, and we have a page on our website that has a presentation and a lot of other really good reference materials for municipalities in our region to get some information about how to plan for and finance good quality, high quality local road networks, multimodal road networks. So that may be of interest, and spread the word to your elected representatives that that's out there. In 2023, we completed the Manlius Village Center Transportation Study. In 2022, we did a Empire State Trail Local Economic Opportunities Plan, and that touched on some areas in the eastern suburbs. And then in 2018, we completed the Fayetteville Route 5 Transportation and Land Use Analysis. So those are all on our website. If you go to our website, smtcmpo.org, and click on publications, you can find any of those studies. And I'll let Mario talk about the Three Villages study, as we call it.
Thank you, Megan. Grab some notes real quick. Say the right stuff here. All right, so this project, long name on screen, we wanted to call it Three Villages Study because we're dealing with the three villages here in the town of Manlius, but I was outvoted by some of our advisory committee members, so kept track with our very long naming convention. So this project started not quite a year ago. We're just about done with this project, a little bit left to do. But before I get into the specifics of this Three Villages study that I'll continue to call it here, just want to touch base on a project that Megan mentioned, which we completed for the village of Manlius last year, the Manlius Village Center Transportation Study. Essentially, what this graphic shows here is the entirety of the outcome of that project. Numerous locations within the village proper, ranging from some recommendations for sidewalk improvements, which are the dashed blue line. I'm having problems seeing the colors as well. The dashed blue line to shared use paths, which is the solid blue line. So a shared use path be about 10 to 15 feet wide, which would be available for both bicycle and pedestrian use. The red line are bicycle lanes, and the dashed red is what's called a sharrow. So that's a pavement marking on the road itself, which essentially just identifies that this is a shared road with a vehicle.
I can't figure out where that is. I mean, I'm sure there are major roads in there that
Sure.
then tell me, but I can't read those words.
Yep. No, gotcha. Can you see the?
Can you expand that?
Can you see the? Well, I'll come over here. That's fine.
We can put out some things. We also this is from a report that we did, and I do have a copy of it from side.
Yeah, so if you want to see it, so just as an example, this is Route 173, this red. So here we are right now at the municipal center.
Okay, now I got it.
Yep. So this is Route 92, Fayette Street, and now here's the overlap, 92 and 173. So collectively, to take example here, perhaps a new bicycle lane on 173 coming into the village down by Tops Plaza. And then there was a concept that was recommended within here to go through the Tops Plaza into the back where the apartments are, to then perhaps come up into the municipal center with the existing trail that does exist, and then expand that trail a little further up to Stickley Drive. So all of this is providing bicycle pedestrian accommodations to perhaps get you to and through the village off of the main roads themselves. That's the outcome essentially of the project that we did, if that helps.
So, as far as 92 as it comes into the village, does that envision utilization of part of the shoulder for, and with appropriate marking of dedication, of creation of a bike lane? That is not part of the integrated actual part of the highway surface itself? It doesn't envision creation of a widening of the overall road.
This section?
And rights of way. I was looking, well, I guess I'm looking at maybe I'm looking at 173.
173?
Yeah. Let's say 173.
Yeah.
What are the proposed improvements, if there are, that would facilitate such a bike network?
Megan, I'll ask if you wouldn't mind. So I don't know if you guys got into this with the project, but you could have the possibility of a shoulder as it exists right now, and perhaps using that shoulder space to sign a bicycle lane. You could also have the possibility of widening that shoulder into the right of way as well, to provide generally a bicycle lane is 5 feet to provide that space. So there are some options. I wasn't involved with the project, so I'm not sure if it went specific into expansions or widening, but those are typically what you do.
Just one observation about the 173 Street. I think that's a like a very difficult space that's become more heavy traffic. And one of my neighbors who's a big biker, and there's a lot of bikers I see more and more using 173. But he used to live in DC and moved to my neighborhood. He said that stretch between 173 and Troop K to the village is the most dangerous road he's ever biked on, because of the shoulder, the lack of sidewalk, people walking. Yeah, he says it's the most dangerous and causes him more fear to ride his bike on 173 from, going
Coming down the hill?
both ways. He's saying specifically right across the street from Limestone Commons, because you got that busy traffic area right there. And you have constant, and you have cars will go around other cars who are waiting to make a left or right turn. And that bridge is so narrow as well that it really doesn't, it's not conducive to walking, which is a lot of up in the Langley
Not to
neighborhood.
distract from this, but
Yeah.
but
So I think you guys
an example of a problem, apropos what you're saying, is there's no light at Brickyard Falls Road when it comes into 173, and anybody making a left turn coming out of the village up onto Brickyard Falls Road creates a stop, especially in heavy traffic times. And the temptation then is for cars behind to illegally go off on the shoulder and pass the stopped cars, which can be hazardous to anyone utilizing the shoulder for biking, walking, anything else. And so I don't know.
It's just a highly, and so one of the things I asked the village when I saw the study, so it's a really neat study, and I think you guys highlighted some important improvements. But the village is like, well, it was almost like they weren't going to do anything because they need money, or there's different, and you realize all the impediments that were there. It existed as only a study, but not money in terms of moving it forward.
Correct,
Am I
so,
saying that
right, so what we do, as Megan mentioned, we're planning, so we do planning work only. We do not implement anything. That is up to, the facility owner to then take that next step, to either look for funding through us, through our federal transportation improvement program, or perhaps with their own local municipal funds.
And these are state roads? Like, when some of these are
Right,
state.
right, so it's
Not
complicated
federal,
with
it's not federal.
jurisdictions and stuff,
Yep.
but it would take a lot of political wherewithal to execute the challenge of all these good improvements that you have. Like the one by Tops, they pointed out going back to the apartments.
Yeah.
When I talked to the business owners there, like Skytop Coffee, there used to be a bicycle store there, and the number of potential accidents and issues because people cutting through because of the busy traffic light and coming around that corner into that parking lot is very dangerous. The way that you guys redesigned it was great. I was thinking, oh, they're going to do this. No. And that's where I guess it takes citizen pressure to get the different municipalities or state government to move forward.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
the hope is that with us or anyone else having a plan in place,
Right.
that we'll move on to that implementation step.
Okay, good.
I mean, you can't implement anything until you have a vision.
No,
right?
and I
Like,
think this is great. When I saw that, I'm like, oh my gosh, these are the possibilities, but I had
Yeah.
made the misunderstanding that they were all gonna jump on it.
Right.
That's a whole other
We
step.
wish.
But-
We would appreciate that too. I mean, we really like to see our planning studies result in projects.
Right.
But there's a lot of stuff there, so, yeah.
Did you have anything to do with the modification of the town of Manlius, Hicktown, zoning ordinance to allow for the creation of sidewalk districts? And because there is a proposed sidewalk district on the length of Enders Road, where there's a petition process it may actually happen. It'd be sort of semi-miraculous to, and I'm not talking about biking, but to address the concerns of so many people whose kids walk along Enders Road with those two schools located there, a significant hazard to kids walking to and from school. But maybe you don't have anything to do with it.
No, we're aware of that, but we were not involved. But if you don't mind, if I can move into the next topic here, is that okay?
Sure.
Oh, I think there's one more. Go ahead, that's fine.
Does the village Manlius and other villages allow bicyclists to go through? Because I usually love to bicycle for the destination, like going to a restaurant or going maybe to a store and picking up something quick. Does that, I didn't see that in there. Are there bicycling lanes within the village, the main street? I was looking at the main streets and I see all these trails other than the main streets. So is there bicycling allowed to visit these stores? Or restaurants?
You are certainly, if I'm understanding, you are certainly allowed to bicycle wherever you want, but there are no, within the village, there are no designated bicycle lanes.
I don't remember seeing that.
No, but that's what their study calls out for, is that there be designated bike areas.
But it's not along the main street. That's what I was looking at. And it's not, is it still, I mean, don't the stores want business? Sometimes bicycles,
You'd think.
yeah, you think with the bicycling, because I know, especially restaurants. So there are no restaurants going between the kind, Tops going to the library behind there, where the pond is, the apartment. No restaurants. So that's all.
Yeah, I think this, as this concept says, Village Bike Network, was to get bicyclists off of the main roads where there's a lot of conflicts with the vehicles themselves. So it's a network designed to allow you to not interact with so many vehicles, which is a safety issue.
Well, I'm going to the stores, on my bicycle.
Yeah, and I don't think this precludes you from doing that.
Just spin out the wall, but that's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right, thanks.
All right, so the Three Villages study, Megan mentioned at the outset, one of the items that we deal with is our Unified Planning Work Program. So that defines and identifies all of the individual planning studies that we're working on. So this particular project was submitted to us by the Village of Fayetteville. they noticed that we had completed that Village of Manlius project last year, and they wanted to do the same thing, but grow that a little bit. So that's why we call this the 3 villages. So they're looking for ways, how can we improve the bicycle and pedestrian system within Manlius, Fayetteville, and Manoa? How do we connect those 3 villages, but also what are some improvements within those individual villages as well? We're really talking more so about on-road bicycle treatments, not so much about trails, although we do, I'll get into that, but the emphasis is on on-road facilities and connecting to all the great parks and other neighborhoods that exist. A really good example that someone talks about a lot within this project is, they live in Fayetteville, and they say, well, I would like to bike and walk to Snowtop, right, to get an ice cream. So they use that example, and just vice versa. Your villages are connected by a little over 1 mile distance, but there is no bicycle or pedestrian accommodation. So that was the thought why Fayetteville submitted the project. What can we do to improve those connections? Like most of our studies, we have a study advisory committee of those seen on screen. So we do have the 3 villages at the table. We have the town of Manlius, we have Onondaga County, both the departments of planning and transportation, we have the state DOT, and we have Centro. So in addition to those agencies and a few of our staff, this is a consultant-led project. So we have hired Creighton Manning. They're out of the Capital District, but they have a local office to help complete this project. So the corridors that we're looking at, there are 11 different corridors within and around the 3 villages. I know it's a little difficult to see the map, but I've listed them on screen here. So these are the corridors that we were examining and considering for recommendation improvement ideas. As part of this project, kind of at the outset, we put a survey out into the community. We had over 356 responses, which was great. Glad to see that number. To help get the word out, we distributed some emails. We have a pretty large email list at the SMTC. Social media, we put that out there. I believe some of the information was cross-posted by the municipalities as well on their websites, Facebook pages, and we also got the word out through the Eagle Bulletin. They did a little news article on the survey. So we had 356 responses. One of the questions that we asked was, where do you live? Again, this was kind of focused on those 3 villages and outside of the town. So happy to see that, as it says on screen, 90% of those respondents were either from the 3 villages or the town of Manlius outside of the 3. So happy with that one. One of the questions that we asked was really talking about current use. So as the question says here, which of these roadways do you currently use to walk or bike to destinations in the area? The top 3, as you can see, Route 257, so that says Route 257 South, so that's the section from Fayetteville down here into Manlius. That was selected almost a third of the responses, followed by followed by Route 5, so that is East Genesee Street through the village of Fayetteville, and then Salt Spring Road. So those were the top 3, and then another question followed up was, where would you like to see some better bicycle and pedestrian enhancements? And in this case, 2 of the 3 or 4 remain, so there's interest in Route 257, the southern section, North Burdick Street over by Fayetteville Town Center, that's the location, and then again Salt Springs Road. So there's a lot of commonality here based on the responses where folks would like to see some improvements. But moving into what are we talking about when I'm saying bicycle and pedestrian ideas? So I'm going to go over kind of what we're calling the hierarchy of treatments here. So there's three main recommendations that we're talking about. Those are shoulders. So going back to the gentleman's question of how do you use a shoulder? In this case, I said you could either use the existing shoulder space to provide maybe a 5-foot bicycle lane. You can widen into the existing right-of-way, or you could perhaps, where it's allowed, you could also do a little narrowing of a travel lane to give you additional foot or two to have a wider shoulder for use for a bicycle lane. Sidewalks, I think we're all familiar with sidewalks, and then multi-use paths, which in the 2023 project, we're calling that shared use path. That's the same thing. So it's a facility that allows for both wheeling, walking, and I guess rolling as well, and it's for bi-directional movement, not just staying with the same way that traffic is going. I have a board that I show that is the entirety of the corridor, so I tried to break it out into certain sections, so it might be a little easier to see. I don't know if it is, but I'll try to do my best. So I'm going to work from the north-south. So here we're up around Manoa, and you see it, Manoa Road, Costello Parkway. We're suggesting using the shoulders for bicycle purposes. And then we're also suggesting that dashed blue line, which is Fay Lane, something called a bicycle boulevard. So a bicycle boulevard concept is more so with signage and striping and putting suggested bicyclist routes onto those facilities. They're lower volume, lower speed, more neighborhood-based locations, again, to get a bicyclist off of roadways that might be busier, higher traffic, more speed, so it's a safety item. Here's an existing view of Manoa Road, and then I'm going to get into that. Next one is the treatment that we're suggesting. So this is bicycle lane using shoulders. So you could either expand or enhance those shoulders to allow a 5-foot bicycle lane that has some posts to delineate from traffic, and you do have space, or there could be space for a bicycle lane on either side of Manoa Road.
What do you do in the winter with the yellow markers that are up?
It does get into a maintenance aspect. Some of those locations, some of those delineators can come out, but they're also made to, as well, to be
That's what I was going to say, just
flop down. I don't know how well that would be after a full winter, but it is allowable.
Doesn't Tower do it?
Yeah, that's along the Erie Canal.
Yeah, like Erie
Yeah,
Canal.
what about they do? I think they do for the winter, do they?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back and look now.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yep. So then moving into the kind of Green Lakes area on Route 290, we're suggesting doing some work to the shoulders. And then on Pearson Road as well, doing some work with the shoulders. It doesn't really, the shoulder's very narrow on Pearson Road. So there is the potential, again, this is all, what's potential? We're not saying this is what you should do. There is some possibility of widening shoulder to provide a facility for bicyclists. And then through Green Lakes itself, that's that dashed blue line. This is what we're calling for a bicycle boulevard. So again, pointing bicyclists to get through up to 290 and then to the Erie Canal path that does exist just north of 290.
So the road inside Green Lakes, that would be a state park development
Yes.
or improvement? And the other one, Route 5 would be a state improvement?
Yep.
Okay, two different agencies.
Two agencies, yes. Yep. All right, so now this is into basically the village of Fayetteville as the agency that asked us to do this project. There's a lot that's suggested within Fayetteville. So things kind of range from a number of bicycle boulevards. Those are the dashed blue lines. So this would kind of get you to Immaculate Conception property, filling in the sidewalks where there's gaps on South Springs Road. This is do good, so sidewalks perhaps recommended on the section of do good, and then using the shoulders as well for some bicycle purposes. And just a couple of examples here. So this is State Route 5, just to the east of the village of Fayetteville, going towards Green Lakes. And one of the suggestions that we're thinking about is a multi-use path. This is the only location in this project area that we're suggesting this type of facility. So again, like I mentioned, this would provide a 10 to 15 foot pathway for bicyclists, pedestrians, and those who are interested in rolling as well. Staying within or around Village of Fayetteville, this is High Bridge Street down by the Spring Ponds Fishery, and we are recommending expanding the sidewalk system, just going from the village line south towards the apartment complex. That's just a little ways down the road from that.
There's a sidewalk there now.
Yes, that ends right around. You use this as call that the village line. This
I was gonna
monument.
say it ends with the village line.
Yes, yep, and that's, so it does pick it up from that point at itself. Okay.
Actually, if it ever gets off the ground, the so-called Garden Park Plan Unit Development, which is part of the 4A where Brookdale, Fayetteville is currently located, and one of the conditions for granting the approval of the Plan Unit Development was for the developer to create a sidewalk connecting that area back into the village to sidewalk construction with all the issues that that entails. If condemnation has, if you have to get land, that you need more than just the existing municipal right-of-way to accomplish that. But like what you were just saying, having the sidewalk extend in that direction.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Okay, so this might be, I'm pretty sure this is my last slide here. So now it's I work my way from the north, Manoa, Fayetteville, and now we're here into Manlius. So I started my presentation with what we talked about with the Village of Manlius project itself, and there's a lot of recommendations. Those carried forward into this project as well. So although this map isn't showing all of those recommendations, I just want you guys to know that they are being considered. So really, what are some new things that we're thinking about within this project? Really more so is about perhaps using land along the Ledyard Canal. That was a concept that had some interest at our public meetings, which I didn't mention before, but we had 2 public meetings for this project, and the Ledyard Canal came up both times as an interest from some of the folks there. So we are suggesting to carry that recommendation forward in this project. So that's essentially what's different or new through this project. I would just like to say that if everything is built as recommended, which right now we're working through the project, probably have about another 2 to 3 months before a document is done. But if things were built as we are recommending to date, that will be about 45 miles of bicycle pedestrian improvements that nothing exists right now for those.
45 miles within those 3 village areas,
connecting the 3. Yep. So connecting and within.
What was the anticipated cost?
To be worked on right now. But some of the costs, range from, we're looking at the information down to the quarter mile. And some things right now range from, anywhere from 100,000 per quarter mile to over 300,000. So a trail, as an example, is going to be your most expensive item, which is running over $300,000 per quarter mile. Right now, that's the construction. I'm not a design engineer, so there's probably more that goes into that number than I'm aware of, but we will document that.
You
that,
mentioned the Ledger Canal
yes,
a moment ago.
yep.
One problem historically, you mentioned the desirability possibly of people living in Fayetteville wanting to visit Snowtop in Manlius. Fayetteville Manlius Road, heavily trafficked, enormous resistance from property owners along Fayetteville Manlius Road to prior proposals to create sidewalks, to even in their backyards where the municipality owned land abutting the canal to create a multi-use pathway
Yep.
to connect the two villages. Those were obstructed by NIMBY opposition. Politically, it became not feasible. So I don't know what, I mean, that's not your, you can't lobby for these things. You can just propose.
Right.
Well, that was some of the discussion, because I was involved many years ago about that Ledger Creek. And, you know, the phrase, not in my backyard, and that was the problem,
Wasn't that
why
the,
that never went anyplace.
wasn't that the gist of the opposition of?
Right, I mean, from the homeowners and.
Right, even with fencing, it might have screened the, anyway.
Yeah, so we also did a project many years ago on FM Road to talk about some of these same type of treatments. And we are carrying forward those suggestions as well through this project. But it's the same thing. It's really gonna come down to what's the community support for these types of projects. So if it's a benefit value to the community, not just to a single or multiple property owners, that's something to be considered.
Well, and actually also, you can tell I'm old looking at me, but I've been involved for many years in the Erie Canal pathway. And actually I'm involved through my Rotary Club in maintaining part of that from DeWitt to Fayetteville. And that started simply as a cinder block pathway, you know, 50, 75 years ago when I was young. And eventually it got paved, and it now is a multi-purpose path. The problem, to use a negative word, is that there are some bicyclists that don't realize they're also pedestrians. They don't look to see people ahead, and all of a sudden they're biking right up, and then they scream, ah, like this, and so does the pedestrian. And that's really too bad, because it's a very wonderful path to get easily from DeWitt to Fayetteville, and you can actually even go all the way out to Green Lakes on it and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll add to that on the rarity that we do have snow in the winter, right?
Yeah,
Also times with snowmobilers happens as well.
Cross-country skiing.
Yep. So that is all that I had. Any other questions for myself or Megan?
Yeah, just how much are scooters becoming a problem? Because I was just seeing another one, and it seems like the speed, you know, between electric bikes and scooters, and just flying down Erie Boulevard. Like I look down in the city area, and I was like, wow, these no helmet, and you know there was a bad accident recently, you know, where someone was killed. But I'm just wondering how much of a challenge is that for transportation now planning, or is, you know, all these scooters being left on the side? I mean, they're kind of cool; they can just jump one and take one. But I was just wondering about the challenge of that. And although I wouldn't mind little scooters around the villages here, because they take a scooter to squeeze down to the village Manlius. But
Yeah.
any observation on scooters and electric bikes?
Oh, I think it's coming up more in the considerations of our planning process. They're not new, you know,
Right.
they're newer here, right?
Right.
But I know anecdotally in other locations, it is a consideration of where are they being dropped off? Are they just being left in the road, or just being left in the sidewalk? So I think it is something that.
Then they'll get right in the middle of traffic sometimes,
Yeah.
too, which is fascinating.
Yeah, but a lot of that is also education. You know, I hate to say that's the cop-out response, right? But you know, education I think is part of it.
Responsibility too.
Safety.
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever traveled in Europe, like Amsterdam, I mean, they have thousands of bicyclists, and they know exactly how to travel it on the same sidewalks that the people are walking. There's no problem. But It's nothing new hearing people downtown.
Right. Well, I'm not sure where they stand at the moment, but so the system that's being used in the city of Syracuse, that's a contract that the city has with the company. And Centro last year entered into a contract with the same company to eventually expand outside of the city of Syracuse.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I think, is it right now, Megan? They're just out of OCC.
They go OCC, and then I think it's, they're looking at the area, I think around Lemoyne and out to Dwight Wegmans, and I think they're considering, out to the village of Liverpool as well.
So they're,
So they're expanding.
yes, they do have interest of expanding. Yes.
Well, they're a great way to get around if you respond.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is not part of your discussion today, your presentation today, but, and I don't know if this is, in the works as part of the overall planning, transportation planning process, but there's an ongoing problem that no one knows the answer to, which is to how to relieve the traffic, volume, that passes through these choke points in the villages of Fayetteville and Manlius particularly. There only are so many ways that you can utilize the existing road network to move a large volume of traffic through the middle of those villages to get to places east in terms of Manlius, Chattanooga, and out in that area, in terms of Fayetteville, Chenango, and other areas east of the village of Fayetteville. And there have been proposals periodically, but not really implemented about bypass construction of new roads, new highways, to try to relieve that congestion, because that's only going to build over time through those villages. And I don't know what there's a limitation. In fact, this is the problem with the overall Central New York road network. If in fact this large volume of new people arrives and new construction of way more housing and everything, it's going to overload the existing road network. And there are existing plans for improvements, but I don't know. Plus, have you actually taken? I guess you have taken into consideration the sort of curveball that this Micron proposal, if it unfolds as it's contemplated, this vast quantity of new people loading and overloading the existing road network. And I mean, I guess you're telling me that you're doing ongoing studies to see what has to be done to try to cope with that.
Yes. So, Megan mentioned we have a tool that we utilize locally for our planning, travel demand model. I can tell you it's wrong because it's a model. Well, all models are wrong. But that tool does allow us to input housing and employment numbers. And also, what would those do to the transportation system? We can also look at what are some changes to the transportation system to accommodate perhaps some of the influx of persons and jobs. We're looking at that right now for our Metropolitan Transportation Plan update. And I think one thing that we should kind of remember, though, is the population back in the 40s and 50s and even the 60s here in Onondaga County was quite a bit more. So our transportation system, although it is old and dated, has already been built for many, many thousands more persons and vehicles that don't exist here today.
Even the kids like drive to high school? Did they do that back?
I think it was designed though with an urban core, right? Whereas now we have a very decentralized, we had what, 400,000, I mean, the population centers have changed.
Yes, they have shifted, yes.
So that's the challenge, I mean, I would think.
That's fair, but I think you do, to Mario's point, still have some corridors in this region that were built for much more industry and
a
prime
single-
example.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great one to bring up because
Yeah.
like, I mean, we are definitely planning for Micron,
Yeah.
right? We're all very concerned about that. It's an opportunity, but
Yeah.
there's some things
Yep.
we're concerned about too, right? But I think we have to keep sight of, although it is a lot of people, it is not so many people that we're going to become New York City, right? It is, we're going to be a slightly larger version of ourselves and hopefully a better version of ourselves. But, you know, keep in mind, for example, we've tried to look at some past numbers and from what I've been able to find, Carrier up Thompson Road, at the height of its operation, was employing 7,000 people. So 9,000 people in Micron, I mean,
Yeah, if that
you gotta
counts,
keep
yeah.
it in
Yeah.
context, right?
No, that's
Like,
a good example right there.
we've had a lot more employment
Yeah.
in this region,
Yeah.
you know, a few decades ago. So I think we'll be able to accommodate it. I think you're right that like there are certain areas, things have shifted a little bit and we need to pay attention to a few key locations. Like overall as a region, we can accommodate a good amount of growth.
And I think that's where the importance of like local government is so important. The village trustee, you know, take your village or town in terms of being wise stewards of their community, like thinking what developments to approve and how to improve them. I mean, I'm fascinated to see, and I'm sure you guys are, I think 81 is going to transform Syracuse. I think it's going to become a city that people are going to want to live closer to or be in. I mean, when that gets, I don't know, that's what my, and I bet you there's money already speculating down there. I mean, in terms of the possibilities. Haven't gone to Syracuse University and lived right in Sadler Hall, and like, I can imagine being able to walk. Not have that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, well, I think one thing also that supports the idea of growth is that we do have a number of the towns and even some of the villages as well that are updating their comprehensive plans. So they're already looking to how can we support, but also at the same time accommodate what we do expect. You know, there will be growth seen here. So I think you do have an opportunity at the municipal level to kind of drive that decision.
I got one last question, because you showed those markers. Do you guys have any sense of how successful the Erie Canal Trail? Because you guys made it connectable. I mean, it was fascinating to be able to ride my bikes over on Onbuck Lake, right over by the fair. And to know that I could have, if I wanted to, taken that trail all the way back here to Manlius in a sense, right? Through the DeWitts. We saw those markers. Do you have any sense of numbers, like how people are using that between going through the Erie Boulevard area?
Yeah, we get that question a lot.
Yeah.
I'll say we don't have great data, and
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody does on trails. It's hard to get that information. You know, like when we would do traffic counts, we could have somebody sit at an intersection or have they do with cameras, you know, just for the peak hour, get this count. But for a trail, it's like you need the whole day and like long term. So there are some numbers out there. Parks and Trails New York puts out an annual report, and that's what we pulled from. But I think there's only like 2 locations in our region where they have counts, and I don't know what the number is off the top of my head, but they do have that. But you know, it varies a lot along the trail,
No, that makes
and then
sense.
people ask us like, well, is it recreational users or is it people going to work? And just don't have that kind of.
But I can see that trail becoming immensely valuable shopping town as it gets redeveloped the way they
Absolutely.
envision it. I'm like, oh my gosh,
100%.
people will be able to bike along that. So I think it's been very forward thinking. That's why I'm
Absolutely.
saying
And
I think
I
the city of Syracuse is going to become a place to be when 81 comes down.
Yeah, you know, and as much as it would be great to be able to put a number on the trail,
Right, yeah.
I mean, do we need that number to justify that that's a great community?
No, I was just
asset,
curious, because
right?
I'm fascinated by it.
I know,
think
we
it's
get the
fantastic,
question, and I'm always like, but it's such an asset to our community to just have that, and people are definitely using it. You know?
There's one gentleman spoke to Europe. I have a sister that's lived in Europe forever, and I just went to a wedding in Munich, and it was fascinating. We spent one day, my family, just biking around Munich, and the way that we could go to all parts of Munich via bike. We weren't the only ones. It was incredible, the network and the trails and how it's just incorporated as part of the street.
Yep.
So that's why I see these possibilities. It's great to see what the work you guys are doing to promote these ideas.
Was there beer along the way?
Absolutely. That's how we programmed. We stopped at the different beer gardens.
That's how they get you.
Well,
Related to
Anecdotally, it's hard to tell, because if you drive by, you don't see much in the way of traffic. You don't really have a fix on volume of utilization.
That was my point about the bicycle lane through the village of Manlius, where they're going to Fayetteville with the stores and the restaurants. no, they want to take us away from that, but the businesses are right there, so I need to walk, not a mind to walk, but it's not encouraging. I think I like to support our local businesses. And I love, my husband and I, we used to bicycle from Fayetteville all the way downtown. It was a lot of fun. Restaurant, but it wasn't easy. At that time, there were a lot more bicycle trails, but that's exactly what I'm saying is that why not bicycle to these places? And, yeah, and I'm kind of surprised to see that we're going backwards, but I also understand it to avoid getting hit by cars.
Yeah, I think that the concept that was talked about in that Village of Manlius was, again, it's that trade-off. And that's always going to be a consideration. But the main consideration is always safety. And that is how we do our planning. That's the first thing. That's the priority.
No, I get it.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
By the way, this is a rather